Hello everyone, welcome back to Too Sweet MTG and welcome to another Cube Tuesdays. Today we're going to be answering the question why Archon of Cruelty is better than Griselbrand in Cube. So for years Griselbrand has been the premium beefy creature in Cube, an 8 mana 7/7 flying lifelink that lets you pay 7 life to draw 7 cards. An absolute unit of a card that has been winning games of Magic for years. Whether you reanimated it from your graveyard or sneaked it into play, Griseldaddy was the go-to card. But why is that not the case anymore? There is a newish kid on the block, and since it's printing in Modern Horizons 2, Archon of Cruelty has been coming for Griselbrand's crown. Archon of Cruelty is another beefy flyer, and when it enters the battlefield or attacks, your opponent sacks a creature or planeswalker, discards a card, and loses 3 life, while you at that same point draw a card and gain 3 life. So why is that better than Griselbrand? The plan is we'll look at both cards individually, kind of discuss what they are both good at, what they both excel at, any weaknesses that both of them have. Then we'll look at the decks they go into to see which one shines through the strongest. So, firstly, let's go over Griselbrand. It's a 7/7 flying lifelink that you can pay 7 life to draw 7 cards. It's simple, but immensely powerful. If you can get this into play, you can activate that ability at any point. It's at instant speed, so you can react to whatever your opponent's doing if you want to. You don't need to be proactive with it. You're the one with the big flying demon here. It's your opponent who needs to answer it, or they lose the game. What Griselbrand is great at is that reaction. If your opponent tries to remove it, you can either dig 7 to find a counterspell, or commonly, you can dig 7 to find another reanimation spell to bring it back from the graveyard again and again. Paying 7 life for 7 cards is a cost, but that lifelink means that the card draw is basically paying for itself. If you get a swing through with Griselbrand, you're probably going to win that game. The game is normally over. But we'll stick a pin in that, and we'll move over to Archon of Cruelty. With Archon of Cruelty, the enter the battlefield effect that it has is really backbreaking. If you can cheat this out early in the game, you're probably removing your opponent's only creature. And if you do this later in the game, you might be stripping a really impactful card from their hand that they hadn't had a chance to cast yet. The fact the ability triggers when it attacks is also insane, means that it'll happen all over again. The life drain of this is really impactful. By the time this is attacked, your opponent will have already lost 6 life and you will have gained 6 life. That is a 12-point life swing. On top of the fact that it's a 6/6 flyer that is going to be getting through for some damage. So those are the 2 cards, those are kind of what they are individually good at. Let's go over the decks that they go into. Primarily, you're going to see these as the premium reanimation target. So let's look at these in a reanimator deck first. So to me, in Reanimator, Archon of Cruelty flies ahead of Griselbrand for a couple of reasons. I think the easiest way to do this, first of all, is to see how they interact with the actual reanimation spells that you can run in a cube. Firstly, let's look at Reanimate, probably the best reanimation spell in a cube. With both of these, you lose 8 life when they come into play, but with the Archon, you get 3 of it back straight away and another 3 life every time it attacks. With Griselbrand, your life is lower, which is not where you want to be if you want to be activating that ability to draw 7 cards. With Griselbrand, you are in a bit of a tricky spot until you get that damage through and gain some of that life back. Then you have Exhume. This lets both players bring a creature back from their graveyards back into play. With Griselbrand, that just happens. It's symmetrical. If they have something, they get to bring it back. If they don't, great, wonderful, you're ahead with your Griselbrand. With Archon of Cruelty on an empty board, whatever they bring back is just going to get sacrificed to the Archon's ability, meaning that you're going to be coming out ahead. That extra level of safety is not nothing, as Exhume is one of the most popular reanimation spells that you see in a lot of cubes. So it might sound like a minor thing, but Archon definitely comes out ahead with that one. And then finally, we have the card Persist. This just doesn't work with Griselbrand because it is legendary. To me, the top 2 reanimation spells in a cube are Reanimate because it costs just 1 mana, and then it's Exhume for me because there isn't an enchantment attached to it that it can be removed from play. The fact that Archon is noticeably better than these 2 makes a huge difference, and the fact that Persist as well is a new one that is nice and cheap compared to some of the other ones, that's not nothing, that is a big thing. So I think next up, let's look at how they both are at actually winning the game once you've reanimated them back into play. So the turn you reanimate them both into play, Griselbrand will sit there, it doesn't have haste naturally. Archon as well will sit there, it doesn't have haste, but it's already drained your opponent for 3 because of that enter the battlefield effect. Then you move on to turn 2, the second turn that they are both in play. At that point, Griselbrand is swinging through for 7 damage, so that's 7 damage that Griselbrand has done over the first 2 turns it has been in play. If you compare that to Archon of Cruelty, which when it attacks for the first time, will drain your opponent for another 3 and then deal them 6 damage, means that on the second turn they're both in play, Griselbrand has done 7 damage to your opponent, Archon of Cruelty has done 12. The Archon as well has also potentially removed 2 possible blockers from your opponent's boards and stripped 2 cards from their hand. If you then take that to the third turn that they are in play after they've been reanimated, when they swing through again, Griselbrand, 2 lots of 7 will have done 14 damage. Archon, with its combat damage and its lose life triggers, will have dealt 21 damage. That is potentially the biggest thing here, is that Archon of Cruelty is a whole turn quicker at killing your opponent. The numbers don't lie, and they spell disaster for Griselbrand. Joking aside, this does not at all mean that Griselbrand is a bad card. It is still insanely good. While I think Archon is actually better at winning you the game, there are times when things don't go to plan. If your opponent has some removal, for example, this does happen unfortunately in games of Magic. In those games, Griselbrand can dig you for 7 cards to get you out of that hole. It is risky if you don't have ways of getting the life back, as you could be going down quite a lot, and at that point you're drawing 7 random cards to find a way of answering what your opponent is doing, either as we said with a counter spell or with another reanimation spell to just get it back. If you get there with those 7 cards, well done, you're a genius. If not, you have 7 cards in hand, but you don't have your Griselbrand. With the Archon, you've already removed a creature, you've got them to discard a card, you've drawn a card. Is that a 3-for-1, maybe? I'm not the greatest at math. But on top of that, you've also gained a bit of life and they've lost a bit of life. But there is one deck, and there is one archetype where Griselbrand still reigns supreme, and to me, that is in a sneak attack deck. In a sneak attack deck, you're using, well, I guess, sneak attack, or maybe something like Through the Breach or Shallow Grave here to get a big creature into play for just a single turn, get its effect off, and try and win the game. Archon is still really good here. You get the ETB effect and the attack effect in the same turn, so 2 lots of that. That is going to be really strong. But Griselbrand with haste is truly, truly terrifying. It means that it comes in straight away, you can activate its ability to draw 7 cards to find a bunch more creatures that you are going to be sneak attacking in that turn, as every creature you are then drawing just costs a single red to also sneak attack into play. In that shell and that kind of deck, I think that's where Griselbrand will come out ahead of Archon. Having said that, in any other cheaty into play style of deck, I still personally think that Archon comes out ahead, especially if it's going in a deck with like a Show and Tell or a Eureka where both players are putting something into play at the same time. Archon comes out ahead because it's removing the downside of that. It's removing the thing your opponent is putting in, meaning that you are just left with it. With Griselbrand, yes, you could put in a Griselbrand and you'll have an awesome Griselbrand, but they could put in like an Emrakul, they could put in anything bigger. Big cards do exist in Cube. The Archon is going to answer what they're putting in 99% of the time. To kind of summarize and bring it all together, the main reason I made this video is that I have had the Nuts Reanimated deck in my own cube a couple of times, and I found myself tutoring or reanimating Archon more. I think in 2023, it's just better at winning games. That's my opinion. I know people still have a lot of love for Griselbrand, and that's completely fair. Griselbrand is still a super, super strong card, and I think there's definitely room for both of them. But as a premium reanimation target, there can only be one, and it is Archon of Cruelty. Let me know down in the comments if you think I'm wrong, or if you think there's a card that could come for Archon's throne as a reanimation target. I would love to see it. But until next time, please like, share, and subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.